But what I want to do is start to talk about these quadrants of what I call healthy masculine and healthy feminine. So I actually put a post up yesterday about toxic masculinity. People often use this word that masculinity is toxic. And I would say, I'm sorry, that is bullshit. I do not agree with that. Unhealthy expressions of masculine energy in any body, man or woman, is toxic. It's how that energy is expressed. Masculine energy in itself is just an expression. Feminine energy is just an expression. But both have a healthy, which you can see at the top of the quadrant here, and both have a toxic, or what I sometimes call the wounded. So healthy and wounded. We all have wounded parts, and we all have a healthy masculine and a healthy feminine. We all have a toxic or a wounded masculine and a toxic or a wounded feminine. And this concept, when I first learned about this, it totally blew my mind, actually, because I was like, whoa, I can see how my parents' relationship didn't survive. I can see where my marriage struggled because of where we were sitting in these quadrants. So let's dive into these. So, the unhealthy or the wounded masculine. And again, this is, think about this in people that you know, but in yourself too. It's not gender specific, although we will often see it in men more for all the reasons I've already mentioned. So, unhealthy, toxic, or wounded expressions of the masculine. This is Christian Grey from 50 Shades of Grey. If you are familiar with the movie, you know, in the beginning, he's depicted as a very unhealthy masculine. It's attractive, it's sexy often, but it's also controlling. It's also dogmatic. It's also forceful. So this kind of masculine expression, or man, we'll often see in the world, men and women, they're competitive, they're driven by money, they're driven by greed, they're disconnected from their heart. They analyze things. They're dismissive emotionally, so we can feel just completely dismissed. If we talk about emotions, they're just like, emotions are not important. Analysis, numbers, data, money, mining companies come to mind in the energetic of this as well. They're often very head-centric, very driven, distant, cold, avoidant is another word if we talk about nervous systems. They're driven by power. They're also really often connected to primal desires. So the thing that's attractive about a man, particularly who has access to this energy, is he can be powerful. He can be wealthy. He can fuck you like mad if you're into that, because he's primal. But if you look at the bottom, he's not connected to his heart. So notice how your body feels, and I want you to share in the comments, how does your body feel about this energy? And you might notice that you have people in your life that this reminds you of. I'm going to get you to do some journaling about this over the next few days. But how does your body feel about this? So for me, my throat contracts. My heart feels a bit like jittery. It's like I can feel I'm not breathing much because this energy it's quite restrictive. And I was thinking about this last night, actually. My first real boyfriend, you know, out of high school, he was like this. He was incredibly controlling, incredibly possessive is another word that I don't have up there. He was highly jealous. You know, if anyone looked at me, I didn't have to have done anything wrong, but if someone looked at me funny, he would lose his shit. So this is the wounded masculine. He looks strong on the outside. He might even be fit and healthy and wealthy, but on the inside, he's emotionally wounded because his heart doesn't feel safe. So this comes from his wounding. So if we flip all of these into the positive, there's gifts of some of these qualities, which we're going to talk about, but we need to understand the unhealthy so we can recognize it in men around us and women around us. Again, we all do it. But also notice what our relationship to this energy is. Where do we go with it? Do we contract? Do we get scared and run away? Does it turn us on? Do we want more of it? We all have our own unique response. Not attracted to it, defensive, feel trapped, like it competes to control me. Yeah, you go on alert. Oh, this is my dad. Ah, interesting. This feels normal for me. That's okay. That's okay. Just notice it. That was my dad, but he's evolved as he's aged. Yeah. It makes me want to be defiant. There's a little bit of brattiness in there. Reminds me of my friend's husband. I judge it and I feel disgusted by it. Yeah. Great. All really powerful responses there. So this is big energy, right? Like, I mean, I'm taking, so we talked about the spectrum. Oops, I took my picture off and you can't see me. But when I talked about the spectrum earlier, this is at the high end of masculine expression. This is the peak. There are much more watered down versions of this that we see in the world, but this is like the most triggering end, so that I can paint you the full picture of how unhealthy it gets when it goes out of balance. Part of it is sexy, yeah, and that's the bad boy. That's the bad boy appeal. And so what's important to acknowledge here is, if there is a part of you that's attracted to this is what we often term the dark masculine, the primal. And there is appeal in that bad boy status if we feel safe in it. But what will often happen is, for women who are more feminine, is we might attract a man like this. Like my example of this first partner that I had, what was I, 18, 19? And he was like this. And I was so soft and I was so sweet and I was so virginal. Like he was the first person I had sex with. And he was more experienced than me sexually, all those things, right? So he was the bad boy and he fucking corrupted me. It's very archetypally opposed from bad and primal and scary. And he took me down some rabbit holes of things that at the time were a lot for me. But he was attracted to my lightness and my sweetness and my vulnerability. And so the energy of this, while this expression of the masculine in a man is wounded, also know that he can be really attracted to the sweetness, the lightness, the purity. And so this is the aspect of polarity, these opposing forces. So what happens when, and you might meet a man like this or know a man like this, like someone said, their father, and he's matured. He's come into his heart and he's come a bit more out of his head into his whole body. And so when a man starts to transition in this way, this is who he becomes. Again, we're going to the opposite end of the spectrum now, the fully healthy masculine. Some would say the divine masculine. For me, I think about it more as the archetype of the king. We've got Aragorn here, who's the king from Lord of the Rings in the third movie. He steps into his kingliness. And so the healthy expressions of masculine energy, this is what we don't see enough in the world, by the way. We don't see it enough because people are scared of it and they don't even know what it looks like to recognize it. He's centered. He's present. He's grounded. He's aware. He's decisive. He's calm. So he's not dismissive of your emotions. He welcomes them, but he's calm in them. It doesn't rock him. He doesn't shut you down. He's like, it's okay, baby. I've got you if you're emotional right now. You just be here and I'll hold you. He's attuned and compassionate because he's connected to his heart. He's fair. So he's as the king, he rules and he's just. He's not emotionally driven. He's clear-headed, but he also has access to his emotions, so he's considered. And here's one of the highest qualities of the healthy masculine. He is led by truth. Feel that in your body. A man who's led by truth. And really notice how that feels. For me, it opens, my throat opens, my heart opens, my pussy gets a bit yummy. It's like my whole body's like, yeah, the man who really is led by his truth, the truth to show up in the world with love and accountability, but also who won't be messed with, who won't be fucked around or pushed around. That is this healthy masculine. He is strong. He is unwavering, but he's also got enough humility that he isn't rigid like the first example. He's very rigid, the wounded masculine. The healthy masculine's not rigid. He's accountable. He will take responsibility when he makes a mistake. He will acknowledge when he's made a mistake. And he's also got a connection to his inner feminine, which is where he's connected to his heart. And so he's not, he's attuned. He can be actually, the men I know that sit in this archetype. So one of them I co-facilitate with, his name is Michael Cooper. He sits in this energy a lot, and he is very intuitive. And so men have access to this part. They've brought in some of their healthy feminine traits, and she kind of just sits in the background, the intuitiveness of the feminine, but it comes through the power and the truth and the presence of his body, because he trusts his intuition. He's not got to the place, sorry, he's evolved past the place where he's like, that's silly, that's, emotional. He welcomes it. And so this is the range of refinement that comes with a man who's really in his healthy masculine. He trusts his intuition, but he's also going to pick up a sword and fight to protect you if you need. And the last one, he's connected to both his primal energy, which we talked about with the wounded, like he will ravish you and take you and be firm as a lover, but he'll also be soft and sensual because he's connected to his heart. He has access to all of those energies. So again, how is this landing in your body? What opens in your body? Both of my ex-husbands are these. Wow, that's amazing, Bernadette. Feel grateful to be with a man who's like this. Yeah, wow, that's so beautiful. I've met him. Yeah. Yes, you have met him, Tessa. Yes, I feel calm, like I can relax. What else? So here's what I'm going to observe from the comments that you've shared. No one's saying this is arousing me. Is anyone feeling aroused by this kingly energy? And I'm just asking because if you don't, sometimes we don't get turned on by this because it can seem a bit dull compared to the bad boy or the man who's more seductive and erotically driven, but is a bit wobbly. So the king energy is so grounded, it will not disrespect you. And sometimes that's the thing that we as women can miss. If we don't know this is a healthy energy in a man, we can overlook him. Honestly, we can overlook him. We cannot see him because he's not chasing us down. He's not flirting with us. He's not pursuing us. He's just there, like the oak tree. He's solid. He's grounded. He's present, but he's not going to take you somewhere that's disrespectful to you. So notice some of those qualities here as well. I love the comments that are coming through. I'm desiring babies, and I see this is the answer to desire. Yes, this is the man. This is the man who takes us beyond where we can take ourselves. And as an example, when I think about my son's father, he had qualities of the first man and qualities of this man, but he had a bit of both, and he wasn't completely grounded in either. And so he was quite disconnected from his heart, actually. Was one of the things I struggled with the most. Is he could be a lot of these things, but he didn't have enough connection to his heart, and he would dismiss me. He would dismiss my emotions. He would dismiss my intuition. He would dismiss my sensitivity. And I'm sharing this because most of you've probably had this experience too. And so he wasn't at that time grounded enough in all of these healthy traits that I felt completely safe with him all the time. And he never disrespected me physically. He never abused me. I'm not talking physically safe. I'm talking emotionally safe. This healthy masculine creates so much emotional safety in us that sometimes we don't even know we can feel that safe. Because if we've never had a man show up for us like this, our nervous system is like, what? This is scary. I can feel like this. And then it will actually unearth deeper fears in us if we are not used to a man like this. And for me, when I started to spend time with men like this, that was what I noticed. I was like, they were so present that all of a sudden all of my whole body got activated in like fear and turn on and all these things. It was like, whoa, he's still and I'm the storm. This is also the dance of polarity. He's grounded and I'm alive with energy. Yes. So it's common. You will notice while I'm talking about these as four quadrants that you'll often notice men who have qualities of both. And also, we're going to talk about the feminine because they will also have access to some of those qualities, as will you. I'm loving the conversations here and I'm loving the things that you're noticing around these energies. So, again, just feel this energy in your body, what it does to you, and what it makes you want or not want. And if it feels unfamiliar, it's okay. It just means you're not used to this level of safety in a man. And sometimes we're not. If we come from abusive environments or if we had a partner who was toxic in his, we're talking particularly abusive relationships, then this will feel super weird. So let's move on to the feminine and more of the wounded feminine. So this is what I would call princess pose. Hence my picture of a very young Paris Hilton. To me, she was so princessy and just like, ugh, maybe want to vomit. The way that she was showing up in the world at that time. I can't speak for her now. This is a picture from many, many years ago, but it's the representation of the archetype of the wounded feminine. And again, men have this too, just as much as you do. So notice the parts of you that speak here. She's insecure. She's anxious. She needs validation. So she wants attention. She's like, do I look pretty enough? Am I smart enough? Do you want me enough? She's a bit needy like that. She can be whiny, like, Daddy, I want this. Or she can be a bit kind of like, I want more. That's not enough. Or she can be desperate too and grabby with her energy. She can be quite manipulative. So the wounded princess energy or the wounded feminine can often be quite seductive. So she plays on the innocence, that innocent, seductive energy that younger girls or young women have that they don't even realize that they have, how sweet they are. They actively manipulate that energy to wrap a man around their finger. So that is what I would call shadowy behavior, meaning it's driven by wounding. It's not driven by a healthy expression. She's very emotionally unstable. So what this means is she's so driven by her emotions that she doesn't have access to a little bit of logic or clear thinking or even discernment that I talked about earlier. She just expresses her emotions all the time. She leaks them everywhere. She drops them everywhere. She vomits them everywhere. And she can be a lot. So the wounded feminine is a lot. She's messy. She's emotional. She's sexy. She's erotic. She's innocent, but she's a lot. Like, it's just chaos. It's just messy, messy chaos. And so notice if you relate to any of this in yourself or if you've been versions of this, and don't judge yourself for it. It's an evolution as we mature. I've definitely been this. She doesn't moderate herself. So she doesn't have awareness of containment or discernment. She's just like, she'll have sex with whoever she wants, or she'll be frivolous with her money. Daddy will give her more. Like, it's all of that energy of entitlement. The princess is very entitled. The wounded feminine is very entitled. You need to give this to me because I'm me. And she has no real self-control. Could she protect herself in a fight? No. She'd be cowering in the corner, crying for Daddy to come and save her, for the king to come and save her. So again, notice this energy. Notice if you relate to it. You might have had partners that had this energy. You might have experienced it in women. And how does your body feel about it? For me, it definitely makes me want to vomit. My nervous system went into chaos. I was this for 45 years. Yeah, I'm so this. What else do you notice about this energy of the princess? And what I want to say is we can have moments. So when we talk about these 4 quadrants, I'll bring the picture back up for you soon. We can move through all of them in a day. But the more mature we get, the more embodied we get, the more discernment we have, the more we listen to our embodied wisdom and move through our wounding, the more we live in the healthy quadrants more and more often. So for me, very, very rarely am I in the wounded quadrants anymore, but I've done a lot of work to get there. And there's still moments where I might feel myself start to slip back and it's like, but I will catch it. Whereas in the past, I lived in this place. I didn't even know there was another option until I had this sort of framework of understanding of, wow, there's another way to be. Yeah, I love this. I would expect to be rescued and chuck tantrums. That is so this energy. I love that. Yeah. Yeah. My teenage daughter does this at times. Yes. My teenage son does this at times. Yes, indeed. It is a level of maturity, Amanda. Yes, but but how do I want to say this? If you were holding the healthy feminine all the time, she would probably move through this phase faster because she has a template of what it feels like in her body to move towards, just as a frame. I don't mean that in a critical way. I mean that in a conceptual way, that the more we have examples of healthy masculine and healthy feminine in our lives, the more we just step into them. We don't have to spend as much time going through the wounded parts because the wounded parts come from what we were taught by our parents, what was modeled by our parents, what our nervous system recognizes. And so, again, when I see this in my son, I'm like, yep, I know this because guess what? I did this. I did this. So when he does that, I'm like, yep, I can see younger versions of myself playing out in him. My masculine's first no triggered this. Yes. Oh, and that's a whole conversation, Bernadette. When a man says no to us, when a healthy king in his healthy masculine says no, where do we go? Do we go into fight or flight, or do we go into this wounded feminine? And that's actually quite common. And that's a whole topic that we will go into later. And thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it's super common that, and the word I would give around this version, the couple of words that are not probably on the screen, but I invite you to feel into them as summaries of this energy of the princess, is collapse. She collapses. Like when I think about myself as this, I collapsed all the time. When something went wrong, I'd collapse in emotion, I'd collapse in chaos, I'd collapse in mess. I couldn't pick myself back up off the floor quickly because I was so driven by my emotions. And so this is the unhealthy expression of the feminine. Remember, we need to access our emotions, but she's accessed them to the point where they're just everywhere. And so what does it look like when she matures? Let's talk about the evolution of her and where we all want to be. Take a breath. Okay. The healthy feminine, the queen. So, healthy feminine energy. Again, we do not see much of this in the world. We see wounded masculine and wounded feminine. We see very little healthy masculine and healthy feminine. But the healthy feminine, the healthy queen, she's open through her body. She's not closed down, but she's not leaky like the princess. So it's open, but it's contained. She's expressive, but not leaky, meaning it's not messy all the time. It's just expressive in the moment. So she feels when it needs to be expressed, and she has attunement about what is the appropriate time or place to express it. Versus the princess who just expresses it all the time with no filter. She's self-assured. She has what I would call a strong spine and an open heart. She has her own back. She can pick up a sword and she could fight to protect herself as a warrior, a warrioress. So she knows she's safe, she's confident, but she doesn't walk around armored. She's contained in her energy, but she's got a softness to her. She's got a gracefulness to her. So you can feel that she's powerful, but she doesn't have to shout it from the rooftops. She doesn't have to broadcast it publicly. It's just there in her. Maybe she sits quietly in the corner, but there's a quiet power to her. She's compassionate. So she's very connected to her heart, but not to the point where it rules her all the time. She understands how to balance the head and the heart. And so she has healthy boundaries, healthy containment, healthy discernment. She's very, very discerning, the queen, in fact. She's radiant. She's magnetic. She has access to her inner masculine. That gives her strength. It gives her fierceness. It gives her safety. And the safety helps her to feel more able to open as a woman. And so she has this energy of sovereignty, of regalness, of grace that is very queenly. Can be understated. You know, you think about some of the movies, the Disney movies. I'm thinking about Aladdin. Yeah, Aladdin right now, where the princess, she escapes the kingdom, and she dresses down in garbs. It's really hard to see, to not see through that external persona of her wearing raggedy, torn up clothes, because you can see her posture. She holds herself in a certain amount of queenly energy while she's also a princess and she's not fully developed. She still has this regalness to her. And so it's hard to hide that regalness. It's not penetrative, it's not in your face, but it's there and it's undeniable. So feel of all of that. And again, notice, how does she feel in your body? How does your body respond to this energy? Do you recognize her? Did your mum display these characteristics? Do you have any women in your life who has shown you what this feels like? If not, it might feel a bit strange. And that's okay. It's okay for it to be unfamiliar or new. How is this one landing for you? I'm ready to mature and leave my princess behind. Amen. Amen, Tessa. I had the same thought when I came across these concepts. I was like, whoa, so don't need this princess anymore. She's done her thing. Feels strong in my body. I have felt her before. Aspirational. Yes. I experienced her in my career. Beautiful. Beautiful. Love this. Excellent. So again, and give me the somatics in your body, ladies. How does she feel? Can you feel her strength, but also her softness? She's so safe. She's not afraid. So if I think about the princess is so emotionally ungrounded, like, a tree without roots. She'll just wobble everywhere. Whereas the queen is so grounded. She's got strong roots. She's got herself. And that's one of the big differences between them, is how rooted the queen is and the king versus the princess, who's just like, oh, you can blow me everywhere. And there's moments where that's appropriate and beautiful. Radiant, grounded, calm, safe, compassionate. She looks very centered. Yeah. But in this picture that I've chosen, and of course, there's many depictions of queen energy. Can you see there's a softness in her? She's not so fierce that you couldn't feel her heart. To me, she has a very open heart. She's there, but she's also like, don't mess with me. So breathing her into your body, and you're going to get to know her more and more throughout this program, because we're going to be stepping into aspects of our queen energy, but then how do we transmute the queen energy, as in evolve it, to also be in devotion to the king? Because it's one thing to become a queen and discover, oh, I can have this power and safety in my own body and attunement where I don't have to be a princess and I don't have to be wounded masculine anymore. I don't have to fight. I've got myself. But then there's another level on that of, okay, I've matured. How And for me, there's an exaltation of the masculine where we're then looking up at the masculine. So for the queen to look up at the king is a whole other step in itself. So these are layers of things that we're going to start to, I'm going to invite you to evolve through. And that's pretty exciting from where I'm sitting. All right. Any other shares about the queen before we move on? All right, I think that's fairly complete. So coming back to the 4 quadrants. Again, I'm going to get you to do some reflecting about this over the coming week from a theory perspective. But just to leave that door open. My father, when I came across this concept, I was so gobsmacked because I realized my father spent a lot of time in the toxic masculine and the toxic feminine, and so did my mother. I was like, no one's ever given me an example, and this was, 10 years ago. No one's ever given me an example of what the healthy masculine looks like consistently in my life. No one's ever given me an example of what the healthy feminine looks like in my life. How can I blame myself for never having gotten there? How can I blame myself for having no framework in my body, in my nervous system for what a man would look like when he shows up as the healthy, or when a woman would look like when she shows up as the healthy? And so you may have your own version of that where you recognize some of these in your parents or in your caregivers or people who've been impactful in your life. I can remember an old boss of mine, and I would have thought when we were in great terms that he was really healthy masculine. He was very grounded and kind and compassionate. And yet the way that work relationship ended, he ended up not listening to me. And I ended up resigning because I started to feel bullied. So he started in the really healthy masculine, at least my experience of him. We worked together for a number of years, but then over time, he started to move into the toxic masculine quadrant for whatever reason. And when that happened, I went into my wounded feminine. I was like, I have to protect myself. And so I left. So sometimes dynamics shift moment to moment. Sometimes they're long-standing, deeply rooted. Here's the interesting thing, ladies. As my relationship to these things has changed, I've stepped into my healthy masculine and my healthy feminine very intentionally through all the things that we're going to journey through over the next 6 months, but also through working on my nervous system, through attachment theory, a whole lot of other things that layer in. My relationship to my dad has started to change, and he has started to step into his healthy masculine. So here's a concept that I'm just going to plant another seed on because we'll talk about it later in the course. As I have descended into my healthy feminine, he has risen into his healthy masculine. My dad takes, in some ways, better care of me now than he did when I was younger, because my mum was always in the wounded feminine. So he would be fighting her for control. Can we hold the healthy feminine even when a man is in his toxic? Oh, that's a really interesting question. Yes. Yes, we can. But there would be a cost. So if a man is holding his wounded masculine and he is dogmatic, he's controlling, and we're showing up in the healthy, at some point, we would not be a match. So the cost would be either it starts to wear our nervous system down, because in order to hold ourselves in that healthy when someone is in the unhealthy, if they're in your life all the time, regularly, and you're spending a lot of time together, it would start to grate on the nervous system. It might start to feel like, it doesn't feel good to be with this man. It doesn't feel good to be in his company, especially if you have men around you that are in the healthy. It'll be like, I don't want to hang out with them anymore. I don't respect their judgment. I don't feel safe. And so the cost would be it would start to feel not aligned. And And I think organically that relationship would probably fall away unless we're talking at a parenting relationship. Then we can do it for small amounts of time. But I'm talking more life partners or business partners or something. We tend to stay in connection with people where the frequency is aligned. So if the alignment isn't there consistently, then things shift, like they move, one of us moves on. Would you end up crossing your boundaries at that point? If you're holding your healthy feminine, you're contained, you're discerning, and you'd know how to stop before you overstep your boundaries. But my point, when I say there's a cost, it would be hard. It would be grating. So let's say an example, a woman who's in her healthy feminine and she's relating with a man in the toxic masculine, at some point she would just be like, I don't have energy for this man anymore. And if she's relating with a man who's in his healthy masculine, she'd be like, oh, this is so easy. I feel so safe. He opens me so deeply. Why would I want to go hang out with that other dude? Where I have to hold my boundaries so firm, where I have to be on alert a lot, where I have to be managing my emotions after we spend time together just to purge him out of my system. So that's where I think there would be a natural coming apart over time, because your boundaries would be tested. Doesn't mean you would give into them, but they would be pushed regularly. And so for me, people who do that, I just find that they fall out of my life, because I choose to do what feels good for my nervous system now when I'm relating with people. If it doesn't feel like a match anymore, it's not worth the energy, because our nervous system tells us how we feel about someone more than anything else. And when I say nervous system, embodied practice is going to give you the language of your nervous system. These are excellent questions. Perfect. I'm glad this is landing. Isn't this life-changing stuff? And this is just concepts to really open your mind to some of the places that we're going to go.